wabarakatuh. Peace be upon us all. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, and a very good morning, everyone. The Honorable Rector of Hasanuddin University, Professor Dr. Insinyur Jamaluddin Jompa, MSc, whom in this case will be represented by the head of the Institute of Research and Community Service, Professor Dr. Muhammad Nasrum Masih, PhD, SPMKK. Our distinguished speaker, Mr. Antoine Ripaud, who serves as the Minister Counselor for Parliamentary Affairs at the European Union Delegation to Asia. Welcome to Makassar. Respected lecturers, staff, and all participants, welcome to the guest lecture on parliamentary diplomacy organized by the International Office of Hasanuddin University. My name is Akifah Naila, a student volunteer of the International Office UNHAS, and I will be serving as your Master of Ceremony for today's event. Before we begin, may I invite all attendees to rise and join us in the singing of UNHAS March.
Universitas Hasanuddin, panjimu kita bawa serta, panjangkan diri dan bakti lamamu kita bawa bersama, membina kejayaan Nusa, Indonesia bahagia, putra putrimu kini bangkit dengan jiwa Hasanuddin. Serahkan kami padamu negeri, izinkan kami bagimu berdiri. Alma mater Universitas Hasanuddin, karunia ilahi. Ayam jantan lambang perkasa, benteng teguh Wirabuana, ke timur ke barat satu, utara selatan Nusantara. Nusa Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, ilmu dan padimu, gelora pantaimu, lembah gunungmu, menjadi teman mengabdi. Serahkan kami padamu negeri, izinkan kami bagimu berdiri. Alma mater Universitas Hasanuddin, karunia ilahi.
To all participants, you may please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, to begin our program, it is only fitting that we hear a few words to officially open our agenda for today. And for that, it is my great honor to invite the Rector of Hasanuddin University, who will be represented by the head of the Institute of Research and Community Service, Professor Dr. Muhammad Nasrum Masih, PhD, SPMKK, to deliver his welcoming remarks and officially open today's lecture. To Professor Nasrum Masih, the floor is yours.
Ya, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. For our distinguished guest, Mr. Antoine Ripaud. Wow, am I right? Wow, thank you. It's very rapid course for the France. As a Minister Counselor, Parliamentary Affairs, Delegation of European Union to ASEAN, and Honorable Dean of Faculty of Social and Politics, Prof. Sukri, and Pak Abdul Razak Changara as a moderator, and maybe some lecturer, Dr. Isda and staff and our student, yeah, from Hasanuddin University. Yeah, uh, very good morning. Today is very nice weather, I think, to do this kind of activity. And on behalf of rectors, yeah, just yesterday, the rectors asked me to represent him because the rector now is on the way to the Taiwan for the some activity there. So it's my great pleasure to welcome all of you, yeah, participants for the guest lecture with the entitled Parliamentary Diplomacy as Practiced by the European Parliament and its implementation in Indonesia and Southeast Asia. We are deeply honored to host this important academic discussion, and which bring together perspective from Europe and Southeast Asia on one of the most dynamic dimension of contemporary international relation, parliamentary diplomacy. Yeah. Today's increasingly interconnected world, diplomacy is no longer conducted solely by the government and Ministry of Foreign Affairs. National parliaments have emerged as influential actors in promoting international cooperation, strengthening democratic government, advance peace, and addressing global challenges that transcend national boundaries. The European Parliament, as I know, has become a remarkable example of how parliamentary institutions can contribute to the international dialogue, democratic failure, human rights, promotion, sustainable development, and regional integration. Through parliamentary diplomacy, the European Parliament has demonstrated that legislative bodies can serve as bridges between nations and peoples, complementing traditional diplomatic channels. For Indonesian and Southeast Asia, parliamentary diplomacy has also gained strategic importance. As a democratic nation and a key member of ASEAN, Indonesia recognizes the growing role of legislative institutions in fostering regional cooperation, promotion mutual understanding, and supporting collective response to shared challenges, including climate change, public health, economic development, digital transformation, and regional security. ASEAN itself has increasingly embraced parliamentary engagement through institutions such as the Asian Interparliamentary Assembly, which serve as a platform for dialogue, cooperation, and consensus building among member states. Such initiatives demonstrate how parliamentary diplomacy can strengthen regional solidarity and contribute to the realization of the peaceful, prosperous, and resilient Southeast Asia. And for universities, understanding parliamentary diplomacy is particularly relevant. Higher education institutions are not only center for the learning, but also space where future leaders, diplomats, policy makers, and solar development of the knowledge and skill needed to navigate an increasingly complex international environment. And Hasanuddin University, we are committed to strengthening international engagement, promoting global citizenship, and fostering interdisciplinary approach to addressing global challenges. As a leading university in the Eastern Indonesian, we recognize the importance of building bridges between academia, government, parliamentary institution, civil society, and international partners. And by this guest lecture, therefore offers the valuable opportunity for our students and academic community to gain deeper insight into the evolving role of parliamentary diplomacy and its implication for the regional and global government. We would like to express our sincere appreciation to our distinguished speaker for sharing their expertise and experience. I also thanks to organizer, collaborators and faculty members and participants who have contributed to making this event possible. I hope today discussion will be inspire meaningful dialogue, strengthening academic cooperation, and encourage our students to actively engage in international affairs and democratic process. Before I close my speech, actually, as a representative of the Institute for the Research and Community Services, all activity related with this kind of guest lecture, we always try to initiative research collaboration, especially to looking for the special topic related with this kind of guest lecture. So last night we already discussed with Mr. Antoine that we will have next step for making matching idea. Yeah, the same like I hope that the dean have a small team. They will build a small team to how to say it, to matching idea with the topic with the parliament parliament idea related with the policy making or anything related with that, and we will support them for the research funding, internally research funding we have, and if the topic is interesting and related with the global, so we try to make it a good proposal and submit it to the international grant. And but at the first time, I think we need to prepare one topic, yeah, one proposal, and we can matching together, and hopefully that we can running in this year as a beginning for our collaboration. So after that we can signing the MOU, because of we already have a one activity in research. Not only, yeah, this is one activity too, giving lecture from Mr. Antoine. So hopefully that the second step is a proposal, yeah. I hope that Dr. Pak Rasak, Abdul Rasak Cangara will arrange this under the supervisor from the dean, and we will support one funding for the internal funding from Institute for the Research and Community Service. That is that I want to explain today. Hopefully that we can enjoy the lecture from our guests, and we can open this activity with the, we can say, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Professor, for your inspiring remarks and officially opening today's event. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before moving to the main session, we will have a brief photo session with our distinguished guests. And for that, I would like to request Professor Nasrum, as well as our speaker, Mr. Antoine Ripoll, and other university officials to join the photo sessions by gathering at the center of the venue. May all participants be standing up and then gather at the center of the venue so that we can all get into the frame for our documentation. Oh, gini. Okay. Jangan. Maybe we can have the photo session for the officials first and then with the participants. We will have the photo session for our officials first. Okay. May all participants come up on the stage to join on the photo session? Okay, let me guide. In 3, 2, 1. Once again, in 3, 2, 1. May we have Unhas pose, please? Okay. In 3, 2, 1. All participants can join at the back. You can get on the stage. Okay, let me guide. In 3, 2, 1. Once again, in 3, 2, 1. Can we have Unhas pose, please? In 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you so much. All participants, may we please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now proceed to the main session of today's guest lecture. And to facilitate the discussion, the session will be moderated by Mr. Abdul Razak Changara, lecturer at the Faculty of Social and Political Sciences, Hasanuddin University. And for that, let's welcome our moderator with a warm round of applause. Mr. Abdul Razak Changara, the floor is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Oh, sorry. Good morning, everyone. All right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And good morning, everyone. The Honorable Professor Dr. Nasrum Masih, PhD, SPMK, the head of the Agency of Research and Community Service of Hasanuddin University, the Honorable Professor Dr. Pil Sukri, MSc, as the Dean of the Faculty of Social and Political Sciences, and also Mr. Antoine Ripoll, the Minister Counselor of the Parliamentary Affairs of EU Delegation for ASEAN. And for all the students and audiences, welcome to the public lecture, our guest lecture today on parliamentary diplomacy as practiced by the European Parliament and its implementation in Indonesia and Southeast Asia. It's an honor for me as the moderator today that will guide and moderate our guest lecture session. And then it is a very, a very substantive remarks before given by our head of Agency of Research and Community Service, Professor Dr. Muhammad Nasrul Masih. I think that is a very substantial remarks to open our guest lecture session that expose to you about how important to develop cooperations between Indonesia and also European Union. And this is not only about the business of the diplomat of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but also the actors beyond the diplomat, which is the parliamentary members and also civil society organization, can engage with strengthen the cooperation between Indonesia and also European Union. And then, without further ado, I would like to introduce to you our distinguished speaker today, Mr. Antoine Rivoll. So Mr. Antoine Rivoll, since October 2019, has been leading the European Parliament outreach to ASEAN. Since 1st December 2023, Mr. Antoine is Minister Consult in charge for Parliamentary Affairs at the European External Action Service, or EEAS delegation to ASEAN. And Mr. Antoine has been a European Union official since 1990. So it has been around almost 40 years, becoming the representation, becoming the diplomat from European Union. He served in various capacities, mostly at the European Parliament, advising members of Parliament on standing and ad hoc committees on media and communication and on foreign affairs. Before coming to Jakarta, he led the Washington DC office of the European Parliament 2012 to 2019, after having served as Chief of Staff and spokesman of the main Parliamentary Group Chair, or EPP, 2007 to 2012. He also served as Deputy Secretary General of the EPP Group in charge of the presidency. Mr. Antoine studied French public law and European law at the University of Paris Pantheon-Sorbonne, and he's married and has 2 children. And then, without further ado, I invite our distinguished speaker, Mr. Antoine Rivoll, to come to the stage. All right, so for our guest lecture session today, we will have 45 minutes speech from Pak Antoine, and then we will be continue with question and answer for around 45 minutes as well. So for all the participants, please be attentive and then prepare your best question to delve deeper towards our topic today. Without further ado, I give the floor to the Pak Antoine to deliver his presentation. Time is yours. Yes, presentation. Yeah.
Selamat pagi semua. Nama saya Antoine dari delegasi Uni Eropa di Jakarta. Saya akan berbicara Inggris karena bahasa Indonesia saya tidak bagus. So I'm learning, but it's a long process. So good morning to you all. It's a joy to be in the most important university of East Indonesia. I live in Jakarta, and I often speak to students in universities. But it's the first time I visit East Indonesia as a professional. I visited already as a tourist, but first time here, and I'm very pleased to be here. We had yesterday, I was honored to have to meet with the rector and the deputy rector and many deans and and your different professors here, and we discuss possible ways of cooperation between this university and the EU. We are very much attached to the EU to developing stronger academic cooperation throughout in the world, in the whole world, but especially in ASEAN, in Southeast Asia, because you believe your region is really of critical importance in the world. And for us, the EU, we are looking for partners and for friends, and I will explain that in my lecture. We'll explain why we are especially interested in having more contact with your region, including with the youth, the new generation that you represent. It's extremely important that we forge a common alliance, that we discuss issues. We don't always have to be in agreement on everything, otherwise it would be boring, and not as enriching. So we need to be able to go beyond our beliefs and share common practices and beliefs. So I was asked today to talk about parliamentary diplomacy, and I will ask if I can have my presentation on the screens, if it's possible. All right. I would like to say that parliamentary diplomacy, and I will explain that in the course of the lecture, it's a new concept, right? And because it's a new concept, it's a bit of a difficult thing to do, because when you do something new in life, you disturb some other people. And you know, when you want to be in a new field, those who are already in the field say, "Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing here? Why are you on my turf?" So I will explain to you that I'm trying here, and I did that in the US, trying to make a space for the parliament, and I am sure, and I know that your parliament, the Indonesian parliament, and tomorrow I will have the pleasure to speak with your regional parliament and with the mayor. So I think that we all have a role to play to build stronger links between ourselves. So maybe we can go to the next slide. So why it matters today to talk to you and to exchange later between us on parliamentary diplomacy. So first, the international environment is more volatile than any time in recent years. So I was born in '63. I know I'm very old for you young people. I was born in the previous millennium. If you can imagine, there was no internet when I was born. That is something that for you, I know for my children too, is a bit crazy, right? How could you work without Google and internet? Well, I survived 40 years like that, right? So I guess it's possible. When I was at university, I didn't have access to a tablet, so I had to go to the library. I spent many hours at the library because I could not have. So you should feel so lucky to have access to so much information at the same time now. So anyway, when I was born and until recently, we were thinking we were living in a world with rules, you know, never perfect. But after World War II, we had so many wars, so the international community, even without globalization and internet, we thought, how can we build a world that is a bit safer, a bit less at the mercy of those who have a lot of power, military powers, nuclear bomb, economic powers. So the answer after World War II was to create international institutions like the United Nations or the WTO. At the time it was called differently, but the World Trade Organization, and all kinds of organizations that try to rule the world in a way that is pacified, in a way that where there are rules that we can obey. And if the rules are not obeyed, even by the most powerful, then there was a way to arbitrate, there was a way to put people together in a room and decide who was right and who was wrong. It still is true largely today, but we have seen in the last 10, 15 years that this international rules-based order is slowly, and recently even more than slowly, rapidly eroding. And we see in the world that we now have conflicts that are the result of the country that have that are mighty, that have powers, military powers mostly, economic power. They use that power for themselves, and at the detriment of the rest of humanity. And they will just do military actions, or they will do a putsch, or they will take an economy just because they can. And this is something that is very problematic, especially for the weakest in the world, for the countries that are less rich, less powerful, less wealthy, that have less military power, because those countries do not have the capacity to react. These countries do not have the capacity to defend themselves, and they are just the victims of a system operated by the most important in the world. And this is not something that is really sustainable. So that is why, speaking about parliamentary diplomacy, how we can make sure that we have rules, global rules, regional rules, global rules that can mitigate, at least mitigate and possibly solve this problem, and make sure that we live as a global community with international rules that are not only they exist, but they are implemented and they are sanctioned by certain jurisdictions. It can be arbitration, it can be the court, etc. So it's important to speak about that, because it's not a theoretical problem, to be able to make sure that parliamentarians and other interlocutors, stakeholders in the world talk to each other to establish rules. But it's a reality of this world. We need that more than before. The second point is trade, technology, energy, migration, and security are now deeply interconnected. So in the past, it was only through military power, for example, that a country could exert its power. Today, if a country is big on tech, I look at the US, for example, if you are, or China, if you are the biggest on technology, then you can use that power to impose your way of life, or your ideas. If you have raw material, like your countries here, Indonesia is rich in raw material, you have a lot of natural resources. Well, you could say, I want to use that at my own benefit, and because it's something I have. Maybe I don't have a powerful army, but I have critical materials that are needed to build tech, digital instruments, or other things that we need. So it's a way for me to be important and to impose my rule, because I have that. And so migration, we see that a number of countries can be either beneficial to they send their people, or receive on the other line. So migration has become also a topic of international relations. So we see now that it's not only about the military, it's not only about security, but all kinds of economic tools are used in a kind of military way, because countries tend to use their benefits not to only to promote good things, but also to be coercive. So in this context, parliamentary diplomacy helps create trust, democratic legitimacy, and continuity. So you have to understand that in order to have countries talking to each other in a peaceful way and in a constructive way, you have different actors that do that. The traditional actors are the Foreign Affairs Ministry. So in Indonesia, you have Kemlu, the Foreign Affairs Ministry, with a minister, and they have an administration. They have diplomats all over the world. This is the same in all countries. So these diplomats are extremely important, because they are the ones who are trying to build good relations with other countries in the world. So this is extremely important. But we have other ways to, not only limited to diplomats. We have now, for example, NGOs. When you think of Amnesty International, for example, which you may know is an NGO dedicated to climate issues, mostly. So they can be they can in a way do diplomacy, because they will have to, for example, a big event that everybody will talk in the media and on TikTok and on, you know, all your Instagram. So they can create the buzz, and they can work for a cause a bit like a diplomat, but in a different way. The big companies like the Apple and you know, the big companies also in a way can use their power to influence the process. So big companies in a way are also doing diplomacy, not officially, but in reality they use their influence and their role to influence the process. And so our parliaments today, so parliaments, this is what we are talking about today, parliamentarians have the capacity to exchange information, to control their governments and other governments, to check what happens in other countries, to discuss problems. Sometimes when diplomats are stuck in a negotiation, it can happen because diplomats usually want to keep good relations. When you're a diplomat, when you're an Indonesian diplomat in Washington, you stay there, you know, for a few years. So you want to build good relations with your host, right? But sometimes you want to discuss something with your friends from another country, but because you're going to stay there for a few years and your aim is to build good relations with that country, you will not want to say things that are not really disagreeable to your host. So you will have to act diplomatically. You will have to be nice, right? But sometimes an issue is not solved by being nice. Sometimes you have to address the question directly. If there is an issue, like the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about, then somebody has to talk about it. And parliamentarians, because they will not be staying in that country, they do not need to build a good relationship with the country with which we discuss something. They are free, and they represent their people locally, I mean in their country. They are free to speak their mind and to say, listen, dear friends, we disagree on that, and maybe we can find a more direct solution. So parliamentarians can help diplomats. They can play good cop and bad cop with the diplomats, and they can be the bad cops, and they can be those who say things directly and help the diplomat. Of course, it has to be concerted with diplomats, otherwise we will have a diplomatic problem that we want to avoid. But certainly we can use parliamentarians to be the bad cop and to help find a solution to a problem that has been draining for years. Okay, then the last point here on this slide is Indonesia and ASEAN are strategic partners for the European Union in the evolving world. So just to give you an illustration, and this is why I'm here. So I am, so I've been, as you heard, for a long time, I've been working for the European Parliament. The European Parliament is a kind of a political laboratory. So it's a unique parliament because it's the only parliament in the world so far that is composed of members of 27 nationalities, so more than one country. We have 27, and these members are elected directly by the people, right? And together they make the law. I will show that in a few slides. So there is no other example in the world of a parliament that is not only made of people from one country and who do the law, and that is unique. And we at the European Parliament, we have decided that it's not good enough to stay in Europe and to speak between ourselves. We have seen that in order to do parliamentary diplomacy, we need to build our own networks with strategic partners. And Indonesia, for the EU and ASEAN, the 11 member states of ASEAN, for us they are a strategic partner. Why? Because we share the same principles and the same values. I spoke before about the fact that we are living in a volatile environment, in a world where the mighty have all the powers, and those who don't have powers then have to just have the consequences of that. We believe that this is not the kind of world we want to live in Europe and in globally. So Europeans believe this is not the kind of world we want to build. We think that we need to rebuild a new world order after the one we have known in the last 70 years. And we believe that countries like Indonesia, a major country in Southeast Asia with 280 million people, 17,000 islands, It's a huge power. Southeast Asia together, you represent 650 million people. It's much more than, it's like the US and Europe together. So you are a big entity, the ASEAN, the Southeast Asia. You are a very important partner, and you have strategic capacities. You have raw material, you have natural resources, you have young people like you here. If you go to France, you will see many old people like me with white hair, but in Southeast Asia, half the population is young. And this is, it could be a challenge because you need to find jobs when you leave these universities. So it's a challenge for a society to have young people, but it's also a great strength. So it's a great value added. So we believe that ASEAN and Southeast Asia and Indonesia especially are critical partners, not only because you are an important place for exchange of trade, you have critical material, you have human resources, natural resources, but mostly because you believe in a world that is ruled by rules, that is governed by rules, where it's not the law of the jungle. I mean, you have great jungles in this country, but we don't want the world to look like a jungle. We want the world to have at least some rules where if you are the weakest part, the weakest link, then you have the ways to be protected. So we go to the next slide. So briefly, what is the European Parliament? So European Parliament is the directly elected institution of the EU. Just to give you a brief recap, so the EU was created after World War II. It's a long time ago for you, but for me, for example, my parents were young in World War II, so it means a lot for me. For you, it does not mean. But for the world, World War II was the latest big war between major countries. And after World War II, again, as I said before, many countries in the world try to see how we can build rules. And one of the things we did in the EU, we had so many wars between us, especially between France and Germany, that we try to find an innovative way to not have wars anymore. And what we found is actually proved to be working. Instead of writing a beautiful statement on a beautiful paper and great signature and all that, we said we're going to want to have peace. We said we're going not to do that. We're going to do something different. We're going to be very pragmatic. We're going to see if we are able to work together. So we decided to pool our resources on energy, on coal and steel, and that's how we gradually built. We shared resources together, and then we shared a common market. So it means that when you're in Europe, you don't have to show your passport to go from one country to another. Imagine you're in Indonesia, and one day in the ASEAN, and it's possible, it may happen, in the ASEAN they decided that if you're an Indonesian citizen, you can go freely without even showing a passport to Malaysia, Singapore, Timor-Leste, or Vietnam. Imagine that your companies can export their countries as if it's only one market. So that's what we have been doing in the 1990s, and now we have what we call the freedom of movement of people, capital, services, and goods. And our EU is not anymore, so it's still 27 member states that are sovereign, but we are sharing sovereignty, and we're sharing some resources. So we built this internal market. Then we said, wait a minute, we have so many national currencies every time. It's true, I don't have to show my passport, but I have to change my currency. So we decided to change that, and in 2002, I think, we went to one currency, the euro, and so now not only you don't have to show your passport when you go from one country to another, but you keep the same currency. And we enlarged to many member states. So when we began the EU, at the time it was called the European Economic Community, and we changed that to the European Union in 9 to reflect the fact that it was not anymore about the economy only, but also about politics, about sharing the same vision, right? And in this process, we decided to elect a parliament directly in all the EU, not only in France, in Germany, in Finland, in Portugal, but we decided to have one body of elected people who would make the law together with the member states that are elected by the people. So that when we have a law in Europe that is applicable to all the 450 million inhabitants of Europe, it is decided by two blocks, two sovereignties: the sovereignty of the people who elect directly the parliament every 5 years, and the sovereignty of the member states who represent the national interest. And so when we put the two together, we have a law that we then send back for implementation everywhere. So that's what the European Parliament is. We are basically an experiment, and we are still experimenting. It's very difficult what we are doing because, like I said before, when you do something new, it creates a lot of conflicts, and people say, you know, why should the Parliament have all these powers? So we are still in the phase where the European Parliament does not have all the powers it should have as a Parliament, but we are fighting our ground together for the member state to accept that they should give more powers to the Parliament. And it's been now 50 years that the European Parliament was elected directly, and we still are fighting to get the right that we should have. So it's a process. It's not a finished process, it's a process. So the Parliament represents the EU citizens and is elected every 5 years. It shares legislative power with the member states of the EU, and it has control on the member states of the EU. We can go to the next slide. So we just explained that. So Parliament co-legislates with the member states on most EU laws. So you should know that if you are an European citizen, 70% of the laws that you implement every day, when you fill your car with gas, when you switch off the light, when you eat something, all the legislation that you implement every day, 70% are not decided in the national capital. They are now decided in Brussels by the European Parliament and by the member state. So it's as if in ASEAN, 70% of your laws were decided in Jakarta at the level of ASEAN. So you are not in this process yet, but it may happen. In our case, it has been gradual, but for the moment, we have transferred a lot of powers to Brussels, to the EU system, while keeping sovereign nations. So we are not the United States of Europe. We are 27 countries, but we are putting together sharing sovereignty and sharing resources. We can go to the next slide. So this is to say that we are, so like any parliament, well, not only we pass the law, but also we check what the government is doing. So we are making sure that the member states are respecting the laws, that they are doing the right thing for the people, and if they don't, then we act, and if needed, we go to court. There is a European Court of Justice based in Luxembourg, and if we need, we can sue to court the member states or the European Commission. So that is one of the powers of the European Parliament. We'll go to the next slide. So what are the big topics at the moment in the EU? And they actually are a bit like in Indonesia. They can be quite similar. The first issue is we want to be competitive, and we want to have industrial resilience. So exactly like your country who wants to become a high-income economy in 2045, and you are really putting all efforts as Indonesian society to be able to build jobs and growth for your generation and the one after. We are trying to do that. We are trying to build a competitive economy, and it has become very difficult to be competitive in the world today because there is a lot of competition. The new thing for Europe is defense and security. I mentioned before that we live in a volatile world, and you see many wars in the world, wars in between Israel and Palestine, war in Iran, war in, Putsch in Venezuela. So the world is full of conflicts, and I did not name so many others. So until now, the EU was largely, not only, but largely depending or willing to give America the charge of defending ourselves. But we are seeing with the current president, and also before that, that America maybe is not really protecting, is not really willing to continue to protect Europe as it did before. So you are going to see that Europe is about to reinforce very considerably its policy of defense and security, and it's a big change because Europe, the EU, is a project of peace. It is not a project of war. So why the EU has been created, again, it was, the reason was we wanted to avoid wars. We wanted to make sure that our countries would not fight anymore. And we wanted to make sure that we work so much well together that war has become unthinkable between us. And it's now a reality. I have 2 children of 27 and 23. For them, having a war between France and Germany has become completely ridiculous. That would never happen. So we have made the possible unthinkable. This looks like nothing, but it's a big thing, right? It takes many decades to do that. But now it has become a reality, and the fact that we can go from one country to another without showing the passport helped doing that. The fact that we have so many exchanges between students from Finland to Portugal, from Poland to France, and all these interaction between students, it helped because when you become friend with somebody from another country, you will never think of having a war with that country. The fact we have the euro also contributed to the fact that people tend to travel more, they feel more at ease in other countries, they go beyond the differences and they go and look for communalities. So that has been helping Europe to be a zone, one area where people would never think of having war. But we don't live only within Europeans, we live in the real world, and in the real world we have a lot of conflicts. And we see in our borders, we've had a war next to us in Ukraine in the last 4 years. And the danger is that, Ukraine is the last bastion before Russia can attack one of us, like the Baltic states or Poland or any. So we have to be protected. And if we are not sure that the US would protect us from an attack by Russia or another country, then we have to defend ourselves. So you're going to see that it's a new step that the EU, even if it's a peace project, if we want to continue to be a peace project, both internally and externally, we need to defend ourselves, because if we don't exist anymore, we won't be a peace, we won't be a project anymore. We will be nothing, because we will be reduced to nothing. We'll be attacked and we'll cease to exist. So we need to protect ourselves. So we're going to invest in our security and our defense. So that is the second topic of what keeps us busy at the moment. The third topic is migration. If you look at the geography, Europe is a place, it's one of the most wealthy areas in the world at the moment. I think it's probably the most wealthy part with America. And it means that many people who are less wealthy, not far from Europe, if people want to have a better future for themselves and for their children, they look at Europe. So if you're in Africa, you know, many countries in Africa are less wealthy than Europe. So many people look at the geography and look at the map, and especially if they live in North Africa, they see that it's not so difficult to cross the sea and to come to Europe. And so they will try, sometimes desperately, they will lose their life very often in the sea. But they will try to, because they can be desperate. They can be desperate situation where people love their job, they have a big family, and they are so desperate to see, what can I do? So I will reinvent a life. And when they look at the map, they say, where could I go? The easiest is Europe. So they cross the border and they come to us. And it's fine, but we can't get everybody in Europe either. So we need to find good policy of migration to be at the same time open to especially those who are victims of the war, for example. So if you are in a situation of war, of course, we need to be able to welcome the refugees from a war. But we cannot welcome all the people who want to have a better life economically, because there are limits to the number of people we can welcome in a decent way. So if you look at the south of Europe, many people want to go from Africa to Europe. And if you look at the east, also many people want to come from the Balkan countries. There have been wars, there are wars in the region, so people want to flee war, and it is normal. So geographically, Europe is a place of migration, and we need to address that issue. It is we cannot do anything about our geography. We are where we are, and the situation around us are what they are. But we need to make sure that we answer in an adequate way, in a human way, but also in an economically responsible way, because we cannot help the whole world, right? Like no country can. So we need to equip ourselves with the right kind of rules that are human, but are also economically responsible. So that's the third topic that keeps us busy at the moment in Europe. The fourth topic is energy affordability and the green transition. So as you know, we all suffer at the moment from the war in Iran, and the fact that many tankers are blocked in the Hormuz Strait, and so we don't receive 20% of the oil is blocked in that little space. It makes that it creates a condition where we have inflation in terms of energy. We're paying more and more expensive our energy, and we're not sure if it continues like that how long we're going to be able to have our flights traveling and our economy going. So energy scarcity can become a problem, and the green transition, we need to think of decarbonizing our economies, because we are destroying our planet by overdoing carbon and overdoing coal and dirty energy. So we need to change that. It takes many years. We are all engaged at the level of the planet with the Paris Agreement and the COP conferences. So, but it's very slow because there are many interests in the game. So Europe believes that we believe in Europe that we cannot kick the can all the time. We cannot always say, like politicians usually everywhere in the world are good at saying, okay, I know there is a problem, but I have other problem to solve now, so I will do it tomorrow, right? And tomorrow becomes the month later, and next year, and in 10 years. And during that time, and you see it very well here in this region especially, but not only, you see all the volcanoes, the earthquakes, the tsunamis, and and we see the planet becoming less and less viable and very less. So we need to do something about it, and so we need to find new sources of energies, and we need to make sure that our planet is able to recuperate and to grow, so that we can live in better harmony with our world, our planet for your next generation. So that's the fourth topic of interest for us. The fifth one is digital regulation. You all have iPhones or phones or or iPad or others instruments, or you're digitally equipped, and there's a big question today of your rights as users of digital products, and the way that the big companies, the big tech companies, are using your data. So in Europe, we are really concerned about the fact that the rights, I mean, your right, your privacy, and your right as a user of digital instruments should be respected and should not be abused by the big tech companies. And so we have putting together legislations that oblige a certain respect of the privacy of the people. So we believe we must protect the users of digital to abuse by the big companies. It's a big fight we have with America, because the current president is telling us that we are doing that just to to make the life of American companies more difficult. It's not the case. It's just because we want to protect our citizens from that. And we hope that other countries like Indonesia and others will help us, because if there is a critical mass in the world of countries that do something to protect the people in their rights to be to have their rights protected and their privacy respected, then we'll live in a better world than if it's not the case. Finally, because all this takes money, we need to work on our own EU budget. I was telling you that the EU is still very much a laboratory, a political laboratory. We are still experimenting. Even after 70 years, it's still a work in progress very much. And we are still working with the rules of before. So you would think that with all the things that the EU is doing, we would have a better budget. But for the moment, we still have the same budget as we had proportionally before. We have 1% of GDP of the member state as a budget. So the EU is doing more and more with less and less money, which is not necessarily functional. So the European Parliament is now fighting to convince member states that if they want the Europe to do more together on migration, on energy, on digital, and on defense, we need to have the appropriate budget to be able to fulfill our duties. So that's what we are thinking about for the moment. We can go to the next slide. So all these policies, the green policy, the digital policy, the defense and research policy, all this really is the backbone of that is certain values that we are also sharing with your country. So the first value is principle is the rule of law, internally and externally. So we need to make sure, as I said at the beginning, that our world is not dominated by those countries that can erase, and we have the case of Russia, for example. So Russia, 4 years ago, decided that they wanted to keep Ukraine in their orbit, so they decided to attack Ukraine, and they said, well, this country, after all, used to be mine in the past, so it could be mine now, so I will take it back. And I will say, actually, Ukraine is not sovereign anymore. I will just send my soldiers and take it back, which is not acceptable, because if we begin having any country, because just it can send an army, go to the neighbors and take the country, then we are not anymore in a safe world. We are in the jungle, right? So this is exactly what we wanted to avoid in the 1940s. We need to have a system with rules that prevent countries to just take their neighbors by force. That is why, for us, the case of Ukraine is not only a matter of regional security, it's a matter for the international community to say we cannot accept that a member of the UN just takes a neighbor like that. So that's why we are fighting for us the question of principle. Fundamental rights and democracy. We are democratic societies, of course, with a lot of defaults and a lot of shortcomings. So nobody pretends to be perfect, but we try to do as much as we can, and we try to build a society that is as democratic as we can. Never perfect, a lot of shortcomings, but we're doing our best. And we believe that rights are not only regional. So some people want to make us believe that the rights are not universal. I would like to understand, when I travel to Indonesia, when I travel to Africa, when I travel to China, when I travel to South America, and when I talk to people in the street, I have yet to discover somebody who will tell me that they don't want to be recognized as a, in their dignity, be respected as a person, be respected for their religion, their faith, their sexual identity. So basically, I believe, when I talk to people, that human rights are really universal. Everybody wants to have, to be able to be educated, to have a roof on its head, and to be fed. and that's the minimum, and then to be respected as a person in our entirety of the person. So we believe in the EU that this is really a universal right and not only a regional right. And of course there can be some differences because we have different nationalities, we have different cultures, we have different religions, so it's not that we have to think exactly the same, but we must make sure that everybody, even if this person is not wealthy or this society is not wealthy or not well equipped, they should have the same right and be respected the same as those who have more. So that's a fundamental that we are defending, not only within the EU but also out of the EU, including here in Indonesia or in Southeast Asia. Equality, inclusion and social cohesion is part of the same thing. We believe that in a society we should always look for inclusion. Last week you celebrated in Indonesia Pancasila, and Pancasila includes social inclusion in one of its principles. So I think we really feel in tune with that. What you are looking for is what we are looking for, is social inclusion. We don't want to leave anybody on the side, and we want to include as much as we can from the population. Sustainable development, climate responsibility. We all have, as I said before, a duty to protect our planet because you know, humans are only one species in this world, and we don't have the right to take everything for us. We need to share the planet with other species, and only then can we really you know, live peacefully and in a nice environment. And we have a duty. My generation, we did a lot of damage. My generation, I must say, for your generation, we have wasted a lot of opportunities. We are largely responsible since the 70, 80 years for the degradation of the planet, and that is why we take so seriously in Europe and with our partner like Indonesia. We have a lot of action with Indonesia and Southeast Asia to build a more responsible policy. And finally, support for the rules-based order that goes with I just said. The next slide. So the Parliament, so that to go back to the parliamentary diplomacy, the European Parliament not only plays a role internally, domestically within the EU, but it plays a role externally. The members of Parliament approve most international agreements. We just finished to negotiate a trade agreement with Indonesia, the CEPA, and your Parliament in Jakarta and my Parliament, the European Parliament, next year hopefully are going to ratify that treaty, and we will have the benefit of that trade agreement. The European Parliament monitors how agreements are implemented, because it's not only, we don't only have to sign an agreement and ratify it, we need to make sure it is implemented for the benefit of people and companies. The Parliament engages through parliamentary delegations, resolutions, hearings and election observations. So every month we pass resolutions on the situation on given countries where we believe there is something to be said about human rights, the rule of law, international relations. And we hold the European Commission and the diplomatic service accountable on foreign policy. So the European Parliament is checking of what the diplomats are doing over the world. So that's the external role of the European Parliament. We can go to the next slide. So what parliamentary diplomacy means, it builds dialogue between elected representatives. As I said, it's not only the task of the diplomats to talk between themselves and to try to solve problems. Sometimes it does not work, and so if it doesn't work, we need to find a political dialogue, and this political dialogue can be conducted by members of Parliament. I work a lot with your members of Parliament in Jakarta. I invite often delegations from various parliaments to come to Brussels, and we have good discussion, and we can clear certain problems that we have. So by talking to each other, we can better understand each other. We can find solutions that were blocked for many years. We had that, for example, we had issues between Indonesia and Malaysia also, and the EU on many questions linked to deforestation and the palm oil, and we had discussions on that because the Indonesia had the feeling that we were we were a bit arrogant, that we were imposing our standards on you. But actually, I think we now have found a good solution, and we have explained really why we are doing that. I explained that to you before. We are doing that because we believe it's our duty not to kick the can and say we will do it tomorrow, because then it never happens. We need to do something. And if we impose certain rules to our own companies and to our own people who pay more expensively certain product because the standards are higher, we are not going to import products that are of a lesser standard. So no obligation for Indonesian companies to sell to Europe, but if they want to sell to Europe, then they need to adapt to the standard that we require for our own companies. So it's just sound management, right? So it's not a question for us to tell you off, to tell you you don't do well enough. We're just telling you we have decided to have stronger rules because we believe we need to do something about the environment today, not tomorrow. And if you want to be on our market, if you want to benefit from our market, from our consumers, then you need to be at the level. And actually, many in Indonesia tell me, actually it's good because if our companies have the high standards on environment, then they will have many markets in the world because they will be at the highest level and they will be able to sell better products. So it's actually a win-win both for your country and for our country. Okay, second point, connects committees, staff. So yeah, we have decided to do what I'm doing here. It's very unusual to have a staff from Parliament located in another country like I am here in the ASEAN region. We did that because we believe that too often our diplomats do not do enough parliamentary diplomacy, do not engage enough with Parliament and with the civil society, universities like here, chambers of commerce, NGOs, trade unions. So that is my job to make sure that we have more engagement between the critical region that is Southeast Asia and Indonesia with the EU. We believe we are better off if we engage more than if we engage less. It's a useful where formal diplomacy may be too rigid. So as before, sometimes diplomats can be very rigid and can have strict rules that they have there too. MPs can be more free. So if you're more free, you can express yourself more freely and maybe solve some issues that you would not have. And it creates long-term institutional relationship and political trust. This is really what we want to do. Build trust with Indonesia, build trust with Southeast Asia, make sure that we diminish the misunderstanding and we understand that we are good for one another. Next slide. So that's about my antenna. So my work here, European Parliament as an ASEAN antenna in Jakarta. I support the day-to-day political and institutional engagement of Southeast Asia. So my work is to put the European Parliament and what we vote and what we think about our legislation, our policy, to explain that to policymakers in your region. And also my job is to better explain the realities of your countries to my members. I have 720 members of parliament. They don't always know enough about the political situation in Indonesia or in other countries in the region, the political situation, the economic situation, the social realities of this region. So I'm trying to send them as many information and memos as I can to put them in touch with the stakeholders on many fields so that they have a better understanding when they pass a law on deforestation, for example. They will better understand, thanks to me, I hope, and my colleagues, what impact this legislation will have when they vote. And if they vote something that has a negative impact, then maybe once we have informed them of the impact it really has on the ground, then they can correct it. So it's a way to make sure that we connect better and we have legislations that are better equipped for the realities of our partners. So I connect the European Parliament with the ASEAN institution. That's why I'm in Jakarta, not because it's the capital of Indonesia, but it's because of the capital of ASEAN. I do relation with the national parliament of the 11 member states of ASEAN, universities like here, civil society, and I complement the work of my colleagues diplomat in the EU delegation to Indonesia and to other regions. Next slide, and I'm about to finish, don't worry. EU-ASEAN partnership. ASEAN is a strategic partner for the EU. Next year, we will celebrate the milestone anniversary. Next year, 2027, it will be the 50th anniversary of the EU, the ASEAN-EU relationship. And we're going to probably upgrade our relationship to the highest possible level. It's called Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. It's a mouthful, but it means that we're going to do more together, more for benefit of the people. There will be a big summit in Singapore. As you know, you have in ASEAN a system of rotating presidency. You know who is the president of ASEAN at the moment? Which country? Anybody knows that? Philippines, right? So next year it will be Singapore. It was Indonesia 2 years ago. And so next year it will be Singapore. So we'll have a summit with the leaders of the ASEAN member states and the EU member states next year. And we're going to decide things to improve the relationship between our countries next year. The EU investment in ASEAN is very substantial. We are putting a lot of money because we know that your priority is sustainable development. You need to be able to have more growth and more jobs for your generation. So we are participating to that. We're contributing to that. We are helping our companies to invest more in Indonesia and in the region, to put more money, to put more investments, to put more jobs. It's also our interest, but it's also your interest to have more capital flooding to your country to be able to do better things, better infrastructure, better social connections, better relation between universities and all that. The EU seeks to support ASEAN centrality and regional cooperation. For us, we see ASEAN as a central part of the Indo-Pacific. The Indo-Pacific is becoming a more and more important partner in the world, an actor in the world. Like us, the ASEAN is a project of peace. You are not a project of, you don't want to expand necessarily. Well, you just expanded, but very legally and peacefully to Timor-Leste, or more precisely, Timor-Leste joined ASEAN as the latest member state, but you don't have views to militarily occupy. Like us, you are a pacifist organization, and you, like us, we have many commonalities between ASEAN and Europe because we are both two regions that want to integrate more. We do it differently with different paths, but it's normal. We don't have to do the same. So you follow your path of integration. But already I know that when you travel from one country to another, you don't need to have a visa, which is already a great thing. By the way, for Indonesians, I don't know if you know, but we adopted the new legislation this year. We call it the visa cascade. So it means that when you go to Europe, in the past, every time you had to go to Europe, you had to apply for a visa. Now that's over. Now you still have to apply for your first visa, but once you got that visa to go to Germany, for example, or to the Netherlands, then you have that visa valid for 5 years, and you can travel with that visa without asking for another one to other countries of the Schengen zone. So it's the most member state of the EU. So if you are a student or professor and you want to go to Europe every year, if you're lucky, if you can travel that much, or every 2 years, or every, so you don't have every time to go to the consulate. It's very time consuming, it's draining in terms of energy, and it's annoying mostly. So we have made sure that we have granted Indonesians the best possible 5 years is the best regime we can give. And it's really, I hope, especially for students, it will ease the exchanges and the capacity for students from both regions to interact and have more exchanges together. I think next slide, maybe so these are figures just to give an idea of the importance of how much investments we produce. You can look at it. It's just figures, but it gives an idea, and it is growing every year. So every year, the EU is spending more money, and European companies are spending more money and bringing more opportunities for jobs and growth in this region. and vice versa. So we have more and more investment from Indonesia and Southeast Asia to Europe. So our two regions are really getting much more interconnected than they used to be. Next slide. Okay, that's about the trade agreement. We took a long time to do our to negotiate our agreement. It took 9 years, so it's a long time. The reason is that because there were a bit frictions, as I explained before, between our countries on the issues of climate regulations from the EU, and now it's been understood. It's also because when the EU is doing a trade agreement, unlike America or Australia or other countries, we are not just doing a trade agreement. Because for us, the rule of law, democracy, governance are so important. When we do a trade agreement with Indonesia, for example, it's not only about trade, about technical barriers or tariff. It's about governance, fight against corruption, implementation of human rights, labor law. So we want to make sure that the country with which we do an agreement do not have bad labor law regulations, environmental rules. So these negotiations take longer because we are more ambitious. We want to not just do a trade agreement, but we want really to establish a more solid relationship with that country, and we want to make sure that the fundamental rights for our people on both sides are protected. And often it's a bonus when we finish by negotiating, by agreeing on an agreement, the population of the country with which we negotiate will be better off because they will have better standards on labor rights, environmental governance, fight against corruption, and all that. So our parliament will ratify this CHEPA hopefully next year. Next slide. Okay, other figures, you don't need that, but it just illustrates again the very intense relationship that we have at economic and trade level. Next slide. Closing message: European Parliament is both a lawmaker and a diplomatic actor. So I believe that the European Parliament is the only parliament in the world for the moment, and I'm trying to push my colleagues in other parliaments in the world to do a bit the same, because the more, if we're isolated, it's more difficult for us to do the job. If it's become normal that the parliaments are playing a role of diplomatic in the diplomatic sphere, then it will become it will help the process, and it will become normal, and then the parliament will have a better role. So I hope we will cease to be the only parliament in the world. I hope the Indonesian parliament, for example, others will also do that. Will also build for themselves, for their parliament, a network of contacts in the world. The work of parliament is grounded in the rule of law, rights, inclusivity, sustainability, and multilateralism. So all our actions are based on that. This is what we want to see. We also want to see that all the organizations that we created, the United Nations and all the others, we would like, we believe they should be reformed. I know Indonesia and other ASEAN countries also believe that. When we created the United Nations system back in 1945, the world was not looking at all what is looking today. The Indo-Pacific was not powerful, it was atomized, so we have a complete new world today, and we have to have the international organization reflect finally the new world in which we live. Otherwise, the international organizations are not, people do not feel represented by them, and it's normal because they are not represented, because if you look at the composition of the Security Council, it does not at all reflect the reality of this world. So the EU is really ready to join action with Indonesia and other Southeast Asian countries and others in the world to reform the UN so that we feel better represented and better protected by the United Nations and other organizations as such. In Southeast Asia, and especially in Indonesia, parliamentary diplomacy helps turn shared interest into lasting cooperation. So I believe that if we have overcome our difficulties between Indonesia and Europe on issues like climate change, it is largely because Parliament cooperation. We have talked together, we have explained to each other why we are doing that and how can we do a better legislation to better respond to your demand that are legitimate. So I think that it has helped ease the relationship and the political mood. And finally, as I close, as I began, in a volatile world, strong institutions and steady dialogue matter more than ever. So in a moment where some countries believe that they are above the law, if we have enough countries like your country, my countries, our institutions who defend the rule of law, I think if we are a majority to defend that, then we will create a better world for your generation. So I would like to thank you very much. Sorry I've been too long, and I hope to have engaged with you with your question. Thank you very much. Terima kasih.
Okay, please give applause to Mr. Antoine Ripoll for a very solid and comprehensive presentation on EU parliamentary diplomacy in Southeast Asia to ASEAN. Right. When hearing about how important the engagement and also steady talks on how we build a better world, I remember the speech of the Minister of Japan, Minister of Defense in Shangri-La Dialogue, and he also emphasized the importance of talks in navigating the complexities of the world today. And then I believe also this event becoming the avenue for us to have more talks in order to understand and also to build cooperation further, because I believe in here the Hasanuddin University student will be a future leaders of Indonesia, and also giving insights to them on how we can engage through multiple channel of diplomacy is very much important. And then what I can sum up before going to the Q&A from your presentation, there are 4 points that are very important. Firstly, about parliamentary diplomacy can become a substantial channel to strengthen cooperation for Indonesia and also European Union. And this is actually proof of the discourse within the diplomacy. I teach the class of diplomacy, and most of them also coming from the class of diplomacy as well in our department, and also the other students as well learn about diplomacy, that the discourse of post-modern diplomacy, that diplomatic actors should be not just be focused on diplomats by Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but can go beyond them. And then parliamentary diplomacy from your presentation has been exposed how important it is to strengthen the cooperation. And then the idea or the views of bad cop and fair and also good cop is very, I think, fascinating. Because diplomats sometimes working for Ministry of Foreign Affairs always talks a very good thing, yeah, because you said they need to live for 3 or 4 years in the hosting country, and that's why they need to communicate well, and then maybe less critical. But from your talks that from parliamentary diplomacy, we can engage in a more critical and also contributive discussion with our counterparts that give more input to the betterment of our counterparts, and this is a very crucial thing. And then also about parliamentary diplomacy, I can see that it makes diplomacy go beyond elitism, because through parliamentary diplomacy we engage many actors, like from you, from Mr. Antoine, engage with diplomats, the government, but also with the civil society, with the parliamentary members as well, and students like this. And of course, this bring a nuance of how diplomacy can go into a very grassroots level. And then this is important because diplomacy actually should not only for the government only, but also for the citizens. That is, how to say, a very good thing to know from your presentation. All right, so now we going to the Q&A session. We are going to the Q&A session, and then please raise your hand if you want to ask question to Pak Antoine Ripoll. And then maybe we take around 4 to 5 questions first, and then Pak Antoine will respond to the question. Okay. Okay, we go first. Please there are two girls over there. The guy behind at the left side, and also the other one on the right side.
All
Okay.
right. Thank you so much, Kacha, and also thank you so much, Mr. Antoine Rupol, for the insightful discussion. My name is Ninditaria Ramadhani. I'm from International Relations, batch 2024, and I was extremely interested in your presentation regarding the parliament diplomacy. It's such a new things for me. And I would like to ask, so considering the diversity of political system across Southeast Asia, what do you think is the biggest challenge for parliamentary diplomacy in building meaningful cooperation between the European Parliament and Asian country? And the last question is, and how have these limitations or challenges affected the effectiveness of parliamentary diplomacy so far? Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much for the opportunity. So my name is Darimenti, you may call me Mimi. Currently, same as Nindi, I'm also international relations student coming from batch 2024. So my questions is quite simple because you have mentioned that our Indonesians or a part of Asians, we are full of the productive ages. So I would like to just ask about how do we, as a youth or citizens of Indonesia, become more can give the contributes to the parliamentary diplomacy or the things that can support the AU and also the Asians. So is there any specific opportunity that from to us, to the youth, how we can contribute to that specific field? Thank you.
Okay, next one. The guy on the back. Oh. Oh,
Thank you, Pak Acha.
yeah.
Excellency Antoine, I'm Imran, teach in International Department. As we know that Prabowo administrations wants to increase the presence of Indonesia in Europe. How European Union responds on the recent policy of the Prabowo administration as he want to increase the presence of Indonesia in Europe. The second one, as the new policy of Prabowo in Europe, how do you think the possibility also to increase cooperation or collaboration between the university in Indonesia, particularly Hasanuddin University, with the universities in Europe? Last one, as European Union is very concerned to democracy and human rights, as you mentioned earlier, how European Union assesses the recent development of democracy in Southeast Asia, particularly in Indonesia? And additional one, is there any possibility for the students of international department, particularly, and Hasanuddin universities in general, if they want to intensive in European Union's representatives office in Jakarta, in Asian, or in the headquarters of Brussels? Thank you.
Many questions.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Imran. Maybe I introduce a bit about Pak Imran. He was former attaché of education in Canberra and also in Malaysia. Okay, and then the next one, maybe one more before you answer the question, and then we will open another session as well. Yeah. Okay. Firstly, Rifa ya, Rifa.
Thank you for the chance. At first, I want to express my gratitude for Mr. Antoine Dupol for your appearance in here today, and I would like to say thank you for your very insightful presentation. And I would like to ask only two questions because these things two were related. Considering about the changes of geopolitical, especially about the Russian-Ukraine war, I would like to ask the question about does this conflict, has this war changed the European Union doctrine about the defense, and has this conflict influenced the European Union approach to defense industrial cooperation and strategic autonomy? Also, regarding reliance and on external partners. Thank you.
All right. Do you want to address the questions first, and then we will open the next session?
I will try to remember the role, otherwise you will remind me.
Yeah.
So first, the question on the diversity in Southeast Asia, and how does it affect how do we work with the diversity? So it's true that we think in Europe that we have a lot of diversity. Politically, we have 24 official languages in the EU, so we have a lot of diversity, culturally, politically, linguistically. But of course, there is even more diversity in Southeast Asia. What unites all the EU member states is that they all have parliamentary democracies, even if some can be kingdoms, some can be republics, but we all function with a parliamentary system. So that's one thing that unites all EU member states. Then if you want to become, in order to become an EU member state, in order to become an ASEAN member state, if I'm not mistaken, the main criterion is to be geographically part of the region. That's why Timor-Leste, for example, is the new one, and because they are part of that. But there is not a lot of political conditions. In our case, if a member state, if a country wants to become a member of the EU, it has to guarantee certain fundamental rights. It has to change largely its legislation to become compatible with the EU. That's because we have a rather integrated system, especially on economy and trade. We have same standards for exports of companies. So we have many things that we can't let a country that is so different come in. We need that country to adopt its legislation, to adapt its legislation to our system. And that's why it takes so long. You don't have that. It means that in order to become part of the ASEAN, it's more of a, I mean, yes, you need to be geographically part of the region, and you need to be accepted by the others, but there's not a lot of political constraint. So it means that the result of it is that you have a very diverse region, both politically, the regimes that are different, the political systems, but also the level of development, the level of wealth. If you compare the richest country, Singapore, to the poorest now, Timor-Leste, there's a big gap, right? So our job is even made more interesting because of that. When I was in the US before to do this new role, to invent a bit this new model for European Parliament, I was dealing with one country, right? Now I'm dealing with 11 countries, very different. I think the key for that is respect. The word is respect, building trust, adapting to the situation. There is not one size fits all. We respect in the EU the fact that the ASEAN is where it is at its integration level. You know, you decide as ASEANers how you want to integrate, how much and how fast and all that. You know, you decide on your legal institutional system. So we just respect that, and we take to make the most of each of together. I mean, we want to do the most of what already you are doing together as ASEAN. And of course, we are always happy when ASEAN does more, because it looks a bit like our model, so we know how to work with a regional system because we are one of them. But at the same time, we also work very well with individually each member state of ASEAN. We you know, for example, we have the second trade agreement we had in the region was with Vietnam. And it was not obvious for many people in Europe because Vietnam has a communist regime, you know, one-party system. And many people said in Europe, how can we do such an agreement that goes beyond trade with such a, and it works super well. I mean, the results of the trade agreement are remarkable. 40% more export on the Vietnamese side, 30% more on our side. So it shows that beyond the political differences, structural differences, we can really well work with all the ASEAN member states. So, but respect, mutual respect is really the key of our work, and building trust with each country, whatever, how it works, right? So that's my first answer to the question. To your question,
Youth engagement. On youth engagement.
Youth engagement. So yeah, next year. So what can you do also to contribute to the youth engagement? So there are actually a growing number of youth organizations, both at the national level and at the ASEAN level and at the EU level, that are working together. Every time we have a summit, and we'll have a leaders summit, we will have one next year. There is a youth meeting, youth summit just before, and they are usually represented at the leaders summit, and they pass the message of the young generation. So there are a number of organizations that exist. I work here a lot in Indonesia with an organization called IYD, Indonesian Youth Diplomacy, and others, and we do a number of events all over Indonesia and in Jakarta. So there are many ways for you to engage, also at university level. I'm sure you can find many ways if you want to engage in ASEAN-EU cooperation or Indonesia-EU cooperation. There are many ways to do it, and I will give you my details, and we can correspond. I can help you on that if you want. Then there was many questions. Prabowo, the policy we support, the EU supports the aim of Indonesia to become a high-income economy by 2045. It's a big symbol because we won 100 years after independence, so it's a good date, a good symbolic date to fix. We understand the difficulty of the job because it's hard to be a prime minister by the time it goes everywhere in the world. A lot of challenges, many external factors that you don't master. Who would have predicted the energy crisis that was initiated 2 months ago? Nobody, and that has a lot of impact on growth and jobs. So it's very difficult to be a leader in these times where everything changes all the time, and you have to keep good relations with your neighbors, with the rest of the world, while keeping your national objective and while continuing to be popular in your population. So it's really difficult. But I believe that this administration is doing well. They are, on target. They are on message. They want to achieve or to progress into the direction of sustainable development. And I think the fact that they want to do sustainable development really fits with the EU agenda, the EU preoccupation to not only develop for the sake of development, but also make it sustainable and good for the planet and for its inhabitants. So I think we are really in sync with that. I see that, for example, your president has visited my national president, Mr. Macron, 3 times in a matter of a few months. So you can see that these relations are really good. And I really much believe in personal relationship in politics. I think that it can look nothing, but if you build personal relationship with leaders, you can really achieve much more than it's at the level of formality and on protocol. So I'm really happy to see that I know that your president sometimes is criticized because he's traveling a lot, I was reading an article a few days ago in the MRT on my way to the office on the fact that a number of people criticize the president because he's traveling a lot. Well, I think it's his way of engaging and doing politics and making Indonesia visible on the world. So you can criticize everything on anything in any country, but I believe that it's good to put Indonesia on the planet. Indonesia is a big country, it's a proud country, rightly so, but we should hear more of it. So I think it's good to have a president that is very engaged, participating in all meetings, having a say. We don't always have to agree with him, but I think that he has his objectives, and Indonesia is on the good track to progress in its main objective and to be recognized as a partner, as a solid partner in the world and in ASEAN. So you had a question concerning university and EU. So we had talks. At the moment, we have for the EU delegation to Indonesia. I'm not part of the EU delegation to Indonesia, but I work with my colleagues closely because we share the same office. So we, for the moment, have engaged with a number of universities, but strangely for me, only from Java. So I think it is time to change that. And so there are talks now to have a more structured dialogue and maybe an MOU between your university and the EU delegation. And the aim is to really have a more structured cooperation, not only bilaterally but also in the context of a network with the different universities, and try to get the most of our cooperation, to have different activities. For example, for the first time this year, every year we organize a film festival at the EU delegation. It just began last week, it'll end next week. And this year, for the first time, and it's a film festival not only in Jakarta, but in 8 cities, but not in Makassar this time, but maybe next year. So we have engaged this time our friend universities in Surabaya, in Medan, in other cities, and they are hosting a film festival. Maybe next year, a practical thing, we could host a movie screening here, a panel discussion after that. So there are a number of activities that we can do. Of course, the most important is the academic exchanges, the academic, lectures, and enabling students to have more exchange with their counterparts from other universities, more exchange program, more opportunities for internships and all that. That is the core of the relationship. But in addition to that, to familiarize each other, we can have some extracurricular activities that bring us more together. So we are looking forward to that, and I know that my colleagues will engage soon with the rector and with the deputy rector to go in that cooperation. You had another question that now I forget. I don't have a pen.
It's related with the geopolitical tension, right?
The
political tension right now, like in America, in the Pacific, and so on.
Yeah. So actually, the EU integration process is only progress when there were big problems, when there were crises. So when things are good, the EU is not progressing, in the sense that EU integration process is not progressing. The only moments when we have progress in the EU integration process is when we have a problem to solve, and when this problem cannot be solved by one member state individually, by each member state individually. Give you the example of COVID. We had COVID, we all had to suffer the consequences of COVID a few years ago. And when it happened in March 20, the EU member state, the competence of public health was a national competence. There was no role for the EU because we have a treaty and there are issues on which the member state delegate totally or partially to the EU, and topics that are completely national competence. And public health was a topic of complete national competence. So it means that we had COVID all over Europe and all over the world. People were suffering from it. We had no vaccination. We had there were a lot of disparity in the access of countries to equipment, to basic equipment, protective equipment. And so there was no coordination between our member states. And there was so much rage and unhappiness within the population in Europe. They said, this is ridiculous, we have an EU and they are unable to do anything, and we are paralyzed by this thing, and why don't we put things together? And that obliged our ministers of public health to gather in Brussels, and even if there was no competence in the treaty, there was such pressure from the public opinion that they had to act. And that's how they finally shared material protective equipment. At the beginning, they were just keeping it for themselves in case they would need it for later. Then they said, okay, maybe we can share. And then we put together some funds to fund research, to look for a vaccine. And that's what led to the vaccination. And when we had finally the vaccine that was paid for by all the member states, then we could distribute for free at the same time to all the citizens of all the member states this vaccination. This did a lot for the EU integration process, because people saw that even if there is no competence in the treaty, if they pressure the governments and their parliament, they push them to action, and it makes EU more efficient. So what is happening now with, we have the migration crisis, when we have the Euro crisis, we go from crisis to crisis, but every time we have a crisis, the member states share a bit more. You have to know that the member states, usually they don't like to share the sovereignty, right? So if you're a member state, if you are France or whatever country, you want to keep your sovereignty, you want to keep your powers, right? Especially if you are the president or the prime minister or parliamentarian, you don't want to share with your neighbor from Belgium or Germany. You want to keep it for yourself. And only if you see that you have confronted with a problem that requires to be efficiently managed, the help and the coordination of the others, then you say, oh, okay, I have to do something with the others. Okay, they won't do a face like that, but they actually are not so happy, because instinctively they want to keep their powers. But only when we have a crisis, then they have to do it. And that's how the integration has been. And now we are facing big, big challenges in Europe. At many, like Indonesia does too, I was mentioning before. But at the moment we have, we have a huge test with our American allies, who are not as allies as we thought they are at the moment. So we really have to rethink completely 70 years of, and even more, of relations with the US. We now realize, it's been a while that we're realizing, but it's like climate change. We kicked the can. We said, oh, it's not that bad. We can wait. We can always wait. When you're a politician, they like to wait. I work for politicians, I can tell you. They like to kick the can, right? Unless they are obliged to choose, then they will do it. But if they can wait, they will wait. And so with the US now, we understood that even if after the current president we have an easier administration for us, we understood that really we need to change our way, especially in terms of defense security. We need to equip ourselves with a more autonomous. We will remain in NATO as long as NATO functions, and I hope it continues to function, because it's a good protection for us. It's not an offensive alliance, it's a defensive alliance, but we need it. But we need to be more independent, so we need to invest more in our defense security and be more autonomous. Also, we want to protect our sovereignty on issues like climate change. At the moment, the administration, the US administration, is pressuring us enormously on two fronts. One is our climate change regulation, and they are telling us that this is a waste of money, and we are actually disadvantaging their companies, and it's an anti-American campaign. Well, it's not more an anti-American campaign than it was an anti-Indonesian campaign. It just has to do with the fact that we need to protect the planet. So it touches everybody. So we are not trying to touch the American companies or to make them less competitive. We're just trying to do something good for the planet and to sustainable development. And also they are attacking us at the moment on our regulations on privacy, on digital. We just passed a legislation on AI. We passed a few years ago a legislation on digital, And the aim of that is to protect, as I said before, privacy, the privacy of the users. And we don't believe that the big tech companies should have the right to abuse of your rights. So we are protecting our people from that. And there's a big pressure from the administration saying, if we continue that, this is unacceptable, this is an attack on Google and Meta and all that. And if we continue like that, we're going to get more tariffs, right? So we are not going to accept that, because we believe that we need to protect our people from abuse of privacy. And we are not going to stop defending the environment, because we believe this is the solution for the future, have a sustainable development. So we have a lot of pressures that we have to deal with. We have the war in Ukraine that we have to do to secure a victory for Ukraine, because if there is no victory for Ukraine, then it will be, any country will be subject to being attacked by its neighbor. So it's a matter of principle. We have the situation in Iran. We have negotiated together with the U.S. on a monitoring of the nuclear capacities of Iran, and we believe they should be placed under the authority of an international organization, and we don't accept that any country should just attack against any rule of law. So we have a problem with that. We have a problem with Middle East, with the unproportionate reaction of Israel on Palestine. So there are many things happening at the same time. It's not a boring time for you who are studying international relations. It's really, a lot is happening. Sometimes you would like a bit more boring, but it's certainly not boring at the moment. But this is to say, it's a long answer to say that yes, Europe is, in a way, it's hard, but we're benefiting from that, in the sense that every crisis obliges us to react and to be stronger and to be more united. Mostly because, and that joins the topic of today, because there is pressure from the public, because the public does not accept that we have an EU that does nothing. And they don't always understand, that when I tell my family, they say, what is bloody EU doing about this? They said, we can't do anything because we don't have the competence. The member states do not let us do anything. And people don't understand that. They don't read the treaty, right? So there is a growing pressure from the public to have a stronger EU, because they want the EU to be more effective. At the same time, it's a bit complicated, as always in life, because when you ask Europeans, do you want more EU on the big topic, climate change, migration, foreign affairs, defense, etc., 80% of Europeans at the moment, especially now, say yes, we want more united action on these big topics, not on little things that should be national, but on the big topics of this world, we need more EU. At the same time, at the national election, they vote for parties that are nationalist and are doing a reverse politics of being more nationalist and less European. So at the same time, people want more EU, but when they vote very often now for parties that are against the EU. So it's a bit complex to navigate, but it makes it more interesting, I guess. Right? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Antoine, for very solid answers. And then, can we open the next session? Okay, please raise your hand, mention your name, and also from which faculty you are. Okay, we have 1, 2, and also 3. Yeah, and maybe from another faculty as well, if there are somebody from outside of the Faculty of Social Sciences. Right on the back as well. Okay, so we have 4 more questions to go. Okay.
So thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Antoine. My name is Raja from Faculty of Economics and Business, batch 2024. So based on your explanation earlier, the one of external role of the European Parliament is to monitor how agreements are implemented with the non-EU countries. So my question is, how far has the European Parliament monitoring of agreements with non-EU countries progress? And how does the EU build trust with its partners while ensuring that this agreement generates sustainable economics benefit for the both sides? Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Next.
Okay, thank you so much for the space, Kaca, and thank you so much for Mr. Anton for the so much insightful presentation. My name is Zaki. I'm from International Relations Students, batch 2024. So maybe you've heard about our economic issue that Indonesia has faced right now. So my question is, to what extent can the Indonesian European Union Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement help strengthening investor confidence and support Indonesian long-term economic resilience? Additionally, what role should parliamentary diplomacy play in ensuring that the agreement benefits not only large business, but also local communities, small enterprise, and young people, or I can say civil society? Thank you so much.
Okay, next.
Okay, thank you Kak Acha and Sir Anton. And I'm Nura from IR batch 2024. And as Sir Anton explained regarding current EU legislative priorities, and as we know, in the ASEAN region, the primary focus remains on rapid economic growth, and fossil fuels like coal remain the cheapest option for driving industry. And my question is, how can EU parliamentary diplomacy bridge this clash of interests so that it doesn't turn into a green protectionism that harms the EU-ASEAN strategy relationship? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next.
This. Yeah. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm Kumara Tunggadewa from English Literature. It's just a follow-up question from the previous participant. It's about we know that European Union is actually built on human rights and democracy as its core value, and it's quite different with the ASEAN, which is believed in the non-intervention principle, which is all the countries has their own. So I think that is why the European Union approach each country to build agreement with. So I'm following up the questions about the human rights. Especially, we know that in ASEAN we have a quite bad stories in human rights violations. So yeah, even there's a country that now led by the allegedly human rights violators, and how the as a organization, as a multilateral organization, how European Union respond to such situations, especially when the European Union built a relationship with the ASEAN countries. Would it be like there will be, for example, we don't know what will happen in the future when the regime, some regimes in Southeast Asia is getting stronger, and somehow barely there's only few opposition. So the possibility in that to be happen, it's quite fearing. So I would see that how would European Union respond to that kind of situation. That's all my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next one. Oh, the last one.
Okay.
Yeah, I have.
Test. Okay. Good morning. Bonjour, monsieur. My name is Alif. I am from Faculty of Law. My question to Monsieur Ripoll about we see in the current global development about especially what happened in the Middle East, in the Gaza, in Iran, in the Hormuz Straits, that there is currently significant decrease in trust on the international, on the Western world, in the Eastern world of the West, of the Western nations, of what they see as the double face, some sort of double face of the double standard in the application of international law, in adherence of international law, where, for example, like country like how Russia are being sanctioned for what they did in Ukraine, but what for Israel, for example, they are not sanctioned at all. We see, for example, Israel still compete in the Eurovision, while in the World Cup, while Russia are sanctioned from the day one for from Eurovision and World Cup for their aggression to Ukraine, and this created an impression among many people in the East, which sees the double standard of the West, and it is also like, for example, we see this create some sympathy, for example, for Russia among many people in Indonesia. Not because they support what Russia did to Ukraine, but because they believe that Russia is the victim of the European double standard. So in the face of this situation, how do you think, as one of the representatives of the European Union, should the European take measure to do confidence building among Indonesians on that Europe is not be silent on this matter, and that they are how to restore the confidence of many people in Indonesia to Europe. And the second is, we know that at present the government of Indonesia and Europe, especially France, by which I believe you are come from, that the Indonesia that there is efforts to improve the relationship between Indonesia and France, but Indonesia and Europe and Indonesia and France. But on the other hand, there is a concern about what will happen if governments in Europe, the present government in Europe, are changing, especially in the case of France, because President Macron have his term ended next year, and there will be concern that if next government, maybe Le Pen or others, coming up, and there may be a change on the policy, on attitude, and focus on the cooperation between Indonesia and France, or maybe Germany or Italy, or maybe others. So my question is, how do you think that the possible changes of government in Europe, especially in France, would impact the relationship between Indonesia and Europe? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for all those questioning towards the presentation today. I give the floor to Pak Antoine to respond. Yeah, the first one is about the engagement, how to build trust. Who is the first questioner before? Okay, that's about engagement and how to build trust, right? From the parliamentary diplomacy of EU in Southeast Asia.
Oh yeah, it was about, yeah. So basically, so because it had to do with, I know the question on Chepa was after, huh? Yeah. So how to build trust is, I think, by being, to begin, being respectful. So sometimes it's about feelings that are being, so we have seen when the EU passed its regulations on climate change and palm oil and all that, there have been feelings in Indonesia, also in Malaysia, that we were not considering the interest of Indonesia or Malaysia, that we were not considering the level of economic development and the fact that we had done our bad actions and now we want everything to be clean. And so we were, there was a feeling that we were not respectful of the stage of development of Indonesia, and we're kind of imposing some rules. But I believe, and partly, partly it's true, partly if when you do an omelette, you break eggs. So when you do politics, you also break eggs. At certain moment, you cannot do anything perfect. So we decided that we wanted to do on climate change, for example, but also it applies on AI and digital and other topics and human rights, sometimes when you have when you want things to, when you hold something seriously, when you want to do something, a policy seriously, you have to know you will not please everybody, right? So, but you have to mitigate that. So you have to say, okay, we want to defend, we want to build a better planet, we want to stop destroying the planet, we want to mitigate the situation. And of course it will have an impact on other countries. So you just have to stick to your goals, but you have to build respect and trust with the other partners to understand what their concerns are, to address this concern. This is what we have done when we negotiated the CHEPA, for example, on sustainability. You have to explain why you do it. Sometimes politicians will use something just to make votes, right? And they will just disregard the reason why this legislation was passed, because it's good to tell your public opinion, oh, the EU, they are, you know, neo-colonialist. So it's good on a tribune to bash to bash somebody, right? And we all our politicians do that in a way, in a moment or another. Not only in Indonesia, that's how it works. But I think you build trust when you stick to your principles. If you believe your principles are important and what are defined you and are supported by your electorate, and then you have to repair what has to be repaired if it has to be repaired. I mean, we believe that the worst would be, because we don't want to be in a bad relationship with somebody, then we do nothing. So if we do nothing, we will have no problem with anybody because we do nothing. If we stick to our beliefs and if we do something about the environment, and if we impose, I mean, if we vote rules that will be compulsory for our companies to adopt, then we cannot do that and at the same time import products that do not satisfy those rules. So you know, that's what it is, and so you have to explain the reason why you do it. It's not because you want to punish your partners, or you want to make it's not because you're protectionist. It's not because you want to break trade. It's because you want to have this principle enacted, right? So that is what happens. You don't do omelette without breaking eggs, and so you have to do something about the eggs that are broken, and you have to repair it, and you have to explain where you come from, why you do this legislation. That is why talking between legislators is important, because only them can explain why they have passed this legislation. Okay, it's not necessarily perfect, but it's what they want, and that is the reason why they want to do it, and the consequences then we can repair. If the Indonesians tell us, well, you know, your regulation has for us that and that impact, then we can say, oh, okay, actually you're right, that's what happened. So you're right on these. We're going to help, for example, the small producers of cocoa in West Java. So we are helping them to be able to implement the legislation. So we are giving some instruments. We are, you know, so we are correcting in a way. We are addressing the issue that we created by this legislation. But it's better to do that than to not do anything and just right. So that's my point. On the CHEPA.
On the CHEPA, about accommodating locals' interests.
Yeah.
In CHEPA.
So I explained before that for us, and it is only the EU does that. Normally, a trade agreement is just about trade issues, and for us, it's not only about that, because we, you know, trade is one thing, but trade is a reflection of your society, and that's why when we negotiate a trade agreement, again, we want to include, we want to make sure that the country with which we negotiate have at least basic laws in terms of labor standards. We do not want to export to import products that are the result of slavery or bad labor or social practices, and our consumers don't want to buy those. But we need to make, when they buy a product in Europe, they want to make sure that it has been produced in a socially acceptable way. They need to know that environmentally it has been produced in decent conditions, etc., etc. And also we want to make sure that the government of the country with which we negotiate is doing something about its governance, is reducing corruption, etc. Because we believe in the long term, it goes back to the first question, it's a matter of trust. If we want to establish good and long-lasting trade relation, not just for 5 years, but for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, we need to create the good conditions for it. And if we're able to do that, then we really believe that these agreements will really bring fruits, because we will operate in systems, not only trade, but beyond, that are compatible, that are more compatible. So we believe this is a base for long-standing relationship, much more than trade, but more on making societies more compatible and more harmonious.
All right, the next is so CPI has been addressed, right? So the next one is about how parliamentary diplomacy of EU prevent EU protectionism.
Protectionism. Again, often what is seen. So I'm not saying that Europe is perfect, because it's not. Nobody is. And I'm not saying that we are never protectionist. What I know is that we, oftentimes we are criticized by various parts of the world to be protectionist just because they don't like, they don't like the legislation we produce, because it creates obligations for them too. And they have not chosen that. But because if they want to export, if they want to sell us their products, we oblige them to have standards, higher standard than what they have. The easy way for a politician to respond to that is to say, you're protectionist, your rules, you just do that because you want to protect your market. And I'm not saying it never happens, because nobody is perfect, but again, all the legislation we pass are not to protect our market, are just to make sure that the obligation that we create to ourselves to begin with are also respected for the product that come to our market. It's the only thing. So nobody is obliged to sell to Europe. We are a good market, but there are many good markets in the world that do not impose so many things. China is a huge market, and many, South America, many markets are. So it's not only Europe, but if we believe that if you want to export to us, you need to be at the level of what we impose to ourselves. And it's hard we are putting ourselves in a difficult situation, which often the Europeans do not understand. I think the EU is the only region in the world that is so demanding to itself, to begin with, on standards. I honestly, as a citizen, I'm not talking here as a diplomat, but as a citizen, I find it's at least very challenging, because we want, because the Europeans, the citizens, want to have a good quality of life. They want to have great education. It's costly. They want to have great healthcare, free. It's costly. They want to have good social protection. They want to have good consumer protection. When they buy something, they want to have the right labeling. They want to know what's in it. They want to, so a lot of obligations for the companies that produce, because we have a lot of rights for the consumers who can sue the companies if it's not done like that. So a lot of obligations. We have a lot of digital, rules. We want to make sure that now the new thing is that minors should not be using social media before the age of 16. So, we're putting a lot of conditions to protect privacy. And now AI, and on environment, and on labor, and on corruption, and on governance. So we are, every morning when I wake up, we do a new legislation, more or less, or every week, right? And that, at the end of it, it makes us probably less competitive, because if we are the only place in the world that where companies, and then at the end it's paid by the people who pay things at the supermarket or the market or online, it makes us a very, maybe we have good quality of life, but it's very expensive, and it puts us in a situation that is less competitive. And when you look at your growth, you have 5% growth. We have between 0 and 1, and it's been like that for the last 20 years. So what we are doing has a huge economic impact and cost. I think Europeans don't really realize it. When I go to Europe, I see that they really have a great quality of life, but people are not happy because they say it's not good enough. And I tell them, you know, you should travel and you should see if you could compare your quality of life globally. You know, it's not perfect, and some people are suffering in Europe, so don't mistake me, but in general there is a rather high quality of life and high standards on many things compared to the rest of the world. So my question as a citizen, as a European, is how can we continue, one, to be competitive if we continue piling up standard after standard on all kinds of topics at the same time, when our competitors are not doing it. And America, for example, now is deregulating on many things, environment, labor, governance, and all that. So when our main competitor is deregulating, when we are all regulating more, how can we be competitive? And the second problem that generates having high standards is that it creates issue with our partners. Like, okay, when we do a law on deforestation, it will be tricky to negotiate with, to explain that to our partners who are doing a lot of, who have, who are subject to that legislation. And so it complicates our life and our diplomatic relations, our political relations with that country. So I think we have to be aware. I think Europeans should take, probably it doesn't exist in life, you never take a step back, but we should take a step back and really look objectively at the situation and say, and make a decision. Do we want to continue like that? Do we want to be the champions on environment, on social and governance and all that? It doesn't mean we are perfect, but we're doing more than the others, even if it's not perfect, but we have always a step more. Can we afford it? Can the next generation afford to have that way of life when the others are not doing the same? That's also why we are trying to have more partners like ASEAN on the rule of law, for example. Also, pleading for the rule of law is costly, right? Because if you plead for the rule of law, then you have to implement it yourself, otherwise you're not credible, right? So there was also a question of human rights and that joined that. So again, when you want to become a member of the EU, the most important criterion is to respect fundamental rights. That is why, for example, we've been negotiating with Turkey for 25 years. I lose track of how long it has been. And we are not progressing one bit. Why? Because Turkey has been actually regressing on democratic rights in the last 10, 15 years. And they do not want to implement the rule that we have. So if they don't implement the rules to become part of the EU, they will never be part of the EU. So we are not progressing because that country who said wanted to be part of the EU is not doing its homework to adopt the rules. I mean, nobody forces Turkey to be part of the EU. They said they wanted to do it. So if you want to do it, then you have to adopt. And the most important matter is fundamental right. We do not want to have a member state that comes to the EU if they have the death penalty, for example. Not possible. You can't enter the EU, the death penalty. So we need to have fundamental independence of the media, independence of justice. These are things, and again, they are not perfect, but we try to have as good as possible, even if it's never perfect. So what does it mean for our relations? So it means we're very critical with our own member state. Every year the European Parliament votes a resolution and a report actually on the situation of human rights in our member states. And if you look at it, you can Google it, you will see it's very critical. And we are not only saying there is a problem on that topic in this country, but we also take action, even to court on that. So, or we cut the fundings to those countries if they continue like that, if they don't change anything. So it's not that we are telling third countries, oh, you are not doing as good enough on that. It's that we are very critical because we believe it's fundamental. For us, it's not something that we do to protect ourselves or that because it's difficult because if we believe it's so important to have a society that protects the weakest and that has a certain fairness, that it takes a lot of political courage, and the parliamentarians have a role to play to make sure that things are done. And that's why we are a union. That's why we are the European Union and not anymore the EEC. It's because we are more than just a market. We are a political union. We have common beliefs. The euro created before the young population in Europe. They can have different perceptions because they come from the north, the south, different ways of thinking. They cook differently and all that. But the feeling that we share basic values and principles of fairness, of inclusion, of respect to diversity. This is extremely important in our population. And our countries would really be unhappy if the EU was not strict about that. So 2 weeks ago, the Parliament passed a resolution on Indonesia on the human rights because there has been attacks on two human rights and environmental activists in Jakarta in March. And the European Parliament had a debate and a resolution, and they adopted a resolution that you can find online that asked the government of Indonesia to do a more deep inquiry about what happened and understand what happened. So, and that is not to point the finger of Indonesia. It's to say, we believe that human rights are universal. We believe Indonesia is a partner for us, an important partner, a strategic partner. It means that we care about the governance and democracy and inclusion in Indonesia. If we did not care, we would not write a resolution, right? So we care about that. So it's not that we point the finger at Indonesia, because we have the same problems in Europe. We point the fingers on our own member state or cities or whatever. So we truly believe that human rights are something. So we're not giving lessons. Then Indonesia will do exactly what it wants. Maybe Indonesia can ignore what we are saying, or Indonesia can say, well, maybe there is something there, we're going to look at it. I mean, no obligation. These resolutions are not binding, of course. They are just the expression of the feeling of the public opinion in Europe that these things are important. And if we want to have good relations with Indonesia, Malaysia, Nigeria, whatever country in the world, these issues matter. They are not, superficial. They're important, an important, fundamental part in our relationship with that country. There was a question on the double standard of Europe, and I really understand what you mean. So I was explaining before that we believe that Russia is behaving in an unacceptable way, and disrespect completely the rule of the UN Charter, and all by attacking Ukraine. And you see how we act toward Israel. So, as a citizen, I share you have a point. And I think that on Israel it's a very specific issue. Because with Israel, you know the history. We had World War II, Germans and a number of European countries have been committing atrocities towards the Jewish people. And this is, for you, young generation, it's far away, but as a country, it's a big thing. And our German friends still feel extremely guilty, and Austrian friends and others, they feel very guilty. And for them, saying something negative about Israel still remains a huge problem. So what happens, maybe you can say we have double posture. What I would describe rather is we have division. So we have, for example, the Prime Minister of Spain is becoming crazy these days because he wants certain countries in Europe, like Spain or Italy or others, but mostly Spain is the one that at the moment is the most vocal. They say, with anything that everything that Israel has been doing, that we believe disproportional, and we have said and in official document that we believe that Israel has been acting in a completely disproportionate way after the attacks from the Hamas. So we are not defending it, but we are not going to go, you're right, we're not going to do with Israel what we've been saying with Ukraine because of the history, because of the relationship with Israel. It's very complicated. It's very complicated. So I understand why, seen from here, you would say, you know, these Europeans, they are saying one thing there and nothing, they are not logical. I can't give you wrong. It is not logical. It's something to do with history, the collective history, the difficulty to overcome certain feelings of a country. It's very deep, and it probably take, I don't know, maybe another 50 years or something if it ever changes. I don't know. As a citizen, I would love to see more courageous action, but I know, I see that history plays a big role and does not allow us to be as fair as we should be. That's the reality. I don't like to say that, but I have to recognize it. It's a fact. But it does not change the fact that, you know, Israel has behaved, I mean, has been attacked wrongly, but has behaved in a way that is not acceptable and has done way too much, not proportionate. It doesn't change the way that we condemn the fact that America did a putsch in Venezuela, and we believe it's unacceptable. What they're doing in Iran is not the way to solve the problem because it's illegal. So yeah, but on Israel it's a special case. So I understand your point. There was a last question.
There is also about the change in government in France.
Yeah.
And then how does it impact Indonesia?
Yeah. So yeah, it's always it's okay. It's a bit like us with America. I mean, for the last 70 years, we've had rather good relations with America. Until now, we have less good relation with America. Does it mean that on the long term? So we are taking lessons from it. As I said before, we now realize that what we should have done 20 years ago, like being more independent in terms of defense and military and security, we are now going to do it. So what is happening in America now, we understand it's not just the moment, but it probably will be long lasting. So it means that we have to take measures that are also structural. It does not mean for the same token that we're going to, I mean, we still believe that on the long term we share many common values with America. So we still hope that even if we have to take some measures that put the relationship in a more healthy with a more healthy dimension, and we need to take some distances to avoid to be prisoners and to independent. We still believe that on the long term the relationship with America is there to stay, probably modified, but essentially is there to stay, and I believe that in a certain time it will probably not go back to what it was, but continue resume in a different way. So in Europe we have 27 countries, we have election more or less every weekend. So you have to, it's true that nobody knows what will happen next year in France. Macron will have to leave the office because he's done 2 terms and he cannot be re-elected. It could be that the extreme right is elected. We will see. And that certainly would affect the relationship, or probably would affect the relationship between Indonesia. I mean, when there is a new party that is saying things that are radically different from the predecessor, of course, when that happens, you adapt your relationship. It does not mean that you have to stop talking to anybody because maybe one day they will change, right? So you have to, when you're a politician, you need to be long term. And when shit hits the fan, as one says, then you adapt and you change course. But usually what you can see is that I always say the EU can be very boring because it's very stable. And with Europe, usually you know what you get because we have 27 countries. Of course, we have elections, but the bulk of it remains stable. I can be sure that in 20 years, in 10 years, the fundamentals of Europe will remain the same, because the people have, what I said before, have really their DNA is to defend peace, human rights, rule of law. That is their thing. You know, that's how they live, that's how they see life. So even if in 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 countries or 5 countries you have a different regime, a different party in place for a certain moment, the majority of member states will not completely change in one way or another. If there is a change, it will be over a long time, because we are 27 countries and we're not moving at the same time. So you will see it coming if really you have to stop working with the EU because they are becoming impossible to work with. I don't believe it's going to happen anytime soon.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Antoine, for responding all the questions from the audiences. Maybe for closing the session, can I have also one question to you? So this is related to the concern of the EU Parliament passing on EUDR about digital rights and protection. That EU has, how to say, a strong concern on it to protect citizens' data. And then recently, you see Indonesia has just agreed on reciprocal trade agreement with America, and the substance is including about the transfer of data to America as well, that Indonesia agreed to adequate jurisdiction for data protection of Indonesians towards America. So how EU Parliament comment on this and advise Indonesian government and especially Indonesian Parliament, because this is maybe around 2 months ahead will be ratified if it is possible for the DPR, House of Representatives of Indonesia.
So we actually have the same. In Europe, we have an agreement with the United States on sharing our data, and we are checking all the time how. So we have this agreement with their conditions. So we are telling Americans you can have our data under certain conditions, and we are checking that they are doing what they promised to do, because we don't want our data to go anywhere in any condition. And sometimes we have doubts, sometimes we see that the administration, certain years we see that the conditions are not fulfilled or that the Americans are not fulfilling their promises, so we check, we go and check, and we send a mission, and we have talks for quite a while, and we check. And if we're not happy, the Parliament, it happened a few years ago, the Parliament rescinded the agreement because we believe that the conditions were not met anymore. And then the American changed, and then we got back to it. So we have the same. It's just a question of, for if Indonesia wants to do it, I think you have to be vigilant. You have to, you can give the data, but you should put conditions to it. You could. That's what we've been doing. Because again, the data of our people are important. Our people really care about how their data are managed, and of course, we need to share to a certain extent. If you are closed economy, you need to share, but at the same time, you need to make sure that some basic rules should be implemented. So you have to be vigilant as a country that the conditions of the agreement are met, not just at the signature, but in the implementation period.
Thank you, Pak Antoine. Ladies and gentlemen, all the audiences here, I think that the last answer enclose our session, and then what I can sum up as the moderator of today's session, that I believe the presence of Pak Antoine here as the Minister Consular for Parliamentary Affairs, EU delegation to ASEAN, that has presented a very fascinating topic about parliamentary diplomacy as practiced by the European Parliament and its implementation in Indonesia and Southeast Asia, has brought to you a very insightful knowledge and also insights about how European Parliament works in Indonesia. And then also I believe that through this particular moment we will have more opportunities to engage with you as well, because we have been present about more understanding on what is European Union, what is European Parliament as well. And then for that, I believe after this session, we can also have engagement with the students informally, and if you want to connect more to Pak Anton as well before we have lunch. And then the issue is about exposure to parliamentary diplomacy has proven to you that diplomacy is not in the business of the elites only, but also for civil society, for parliamentarians, where many voices can be heard, can be engaging in fostering the cooperation between Indonesia and also European Union. So I also thank to our International Relations Office for helping this event to be realized. So applause all audiences to our International Relations Office and teams. And then big applause to Pak Anton as well for this session. So by reciting Hamdalah Rabbil Alamin, I enclose this session today. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And I give back to our Master of Ceremony.
And I would like to thank you all. I think you had great questions. It means you already know many things and you're interested. So I have my details. I could only encourage you to deepen this first contact. If you want to have discussions also maybe more privately, you can organize some conversation with people you're interested with. I can help you with finding the right interlocutors on certain topics if you want to do something even in a more smaller environment or smaller context. And then we're going to explore with the rector and with the university how we can have more interaction between not only your university, which is the flagship in eastern Indonesia, but also develop more actions. We have, for example, in the Unair University in Surabaya, we have an EU center. So why not? Maybe we could have an EU center here in Makassar, and that's a place, kind of a venue where we can have more interactions, more exchanges, look at opportunities for you as students and as future professionals with your homologues from the EU. So we would be happy to work to that, but of course it will be up to the rector to decide what he wants to do. But certainly we're willing to do more and to compensate for having done too much maybe with Java so far and not enough with East Indonesia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pak Anton. We expect for that center established in Hasanuddin University. Shall we have a second photo session, or that's enough? Enough, yeah? Okay, so I give back to the Master of Ceremony.
Okay, thank you so much for our moderator and our distinguished speaker for such an insightful and engaging session. Now I would like to kindly ask our speaker and our moderator to remain on stage. And as a token of our sincere appreciation for the valuable knowledge, experience, and insights shared with us today, we would like to present a souvenir to our distinguished guest, Mr. Anton Repol. And may I kindly invite the representative of the International Office of UNHAS, Sir Muhammad Ridwan, to come forward and present the token of appreciation. Maybe we can go up on the stage for documentation. Okay. Let me guide. In 3, 2, 1. Once again, in 3, 2, 1. We have another souvenirs in here. Can we have another photo, please? Can we have another photo, please? In 3, 2, 1. Once again with UNHAS pose. In 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the end of today's guest lecture on parliamentary diplomacy, on behalf of the International Office of Hasanuddin University, we would like to express our sincere gratitude to our speaker for sharing his expertise and valuable insights with us today. We also extend our appreciation to all participants for your active engagement throughout the event. My name is Akifa Naila, and it has been my pleasure to serve as your Master of Ceremony for today. We look forward to having you again on our future agenda. Thank you and have a pleasant day ahead. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. For all of the participants who wish to access for the certificate, please scan the QR code as shown on the screen and complete the G form, and we will send the certificate to you via email. Thank you.